So let's actually move on to discuss some news, particularly about Canon. So going into next year, Canon's already had an interesting year this year. With things that they have already released, and then cameras that we are coming out with, both mirrorless and the cinema world. But 2021, as interesting as this year is, 2021 is looking to be a very, very interesting camera. Now, there's a lot of news that came out in like the last couple weeks ago. Again, I didn't get a chance to get to, but this I wanted to get to it really quickly with you guys, because so the first thing I wanted to definitely talk about was something that recently came out, and that was this new rumor that it was that Canon's working out and putting testing to a new 8K Super 35 cinema camera. Now, we knew that, at least from previous rumors, that they were looking to put 8K cameras to the market in the cinema line, but this is sort of the first inkling that they are actually going to be putting, that we know at least one of them, a few things about at least one of those two 8K cameras that are supposed to be coming next year. Now, keep in mind, everybody, that this is a CR1. This is coming from Canon Rumors, but it's classified as a CR1, which there's not been any from reliable sources that Canon Rumors has been able to fully confirm. So take this with a really grain of salt. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But the specs that they've sort of been told, I guess it's been from a tester or two. But this is sort of what they've been told. It's going to be an 8K 3x2 Super 35 image sensor. It's going to have high-speed 3D mode. It's going to have the dual gain output that they have in the Canon C300 Mark III and the C70 that is reportedly coming out. It's going to have dual pixel autofocus 2 that's in the R5 and the R6. Here's something new that's supposedly coming with Canon, is that it's having a dual native ISO. It's supposed to be coming with a dual native ISO. It's going to have the Digic DVX processor. If this is true, this will be the first Canon cinema camera that actually has this processor. The other cinema cameras have, I think, Digic 7. All the previous cinema cameras have the Digic 7 processor, I remember. So this, only the R5, the R6, and the 1DX Mark III have the Digic X processor. So this one is going to have their latest and greatest processor. It's going to do DCI 8K up to 60 frames per second in 12-bit RAW. And then it's going to use some sort of two green pixel binning. I guess it's going to do full sensor 4K RAW, similar to how the Ursa Pro 12K is using its sensor, but it's going to do it so it can do 4K 90 frames per second in 12-bit RAW. So this is very exciting news. If, again, this is only CR1, it's not really to take, but so definitely take a grain of salt till we get more to it. But if half of this stuff is true, this is a very, very exciting cinema camera. If I had to take a guess, this is probably going to be the new C700, if I really had to take a guess on it. Because typically that's what Canon typically does. They start out with their flagship camera and then they work their way down. Because remember, the C700, well, even though it now went to a full-frame sensor, the C700 also started off as a Super 35. So I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to do a C700 Mark II with the 8K. And then maybe they'll come out later with a C700 Mark II full frame that does a full frame in 8K. So this is going to be interesting to see where this ends up. That, if I had to take a guess, that's where, because all of this stuff seems like top end, very at the high end, which means it's going to be at that C700, which, if I remember correctly, it's like $33,000. If I remember correctly, it's like $33,000. So definitely not necessarily for the typical indie filmmaker. So that's number one. The next one that we're going to go to is the rumor that sort of came out that there's a C90. Now, this is a CR2 rumor, which means there's definitely a couple sources, more reliable sources, confirming that this is coming, but it's not taken to the bank. So it's that in between. But and really, there's nothing else to really talk about it except that they've been told that there's a C90. Now, if I was to take a guess what the C90 is based on the trajectory that we've seen, I would have to take a guess that this is basically the equivalent of the C500 Mark II without RAW. So, a full frame 6K sensor camera that will oversample the 6K down to 4K, shoot up to 60 frames per second. If I had to take a guess, just based on what the C50 is supposed to basically be the C200 without RAW, we know the C70 is essentially the C300 Mark III without RAW. So the logical succession would be that this is the C500 Mark II without RAW. So we'll see how that is and how interesting that is. Trevor, I think the manufacturers need to slow down. They want to keep people's attention, but the place is too much. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I definitely can see that. I think it's just the fact that everybody, I guess right now, there's sort of like an arms race right now because everybody's sort of been at home. Even though productions have sort of been picking up, big productions are kind of like still at a standstill. So this is a time to sort of really hit all the markets at once. We'll see how effective that's going to be. I think the C70 is good is on a good space, and they should give it time to breathe. I definitely agree. I think the C70. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in getting the C70. I'm going to say this. I am definitely I'm probably looking to get the C70, but I'm kind of debating between right now the C70 and the Komodo. But I'm strongly leaning towards the C70 because it's just like if you're okay without being in the RAW workspace, the C70 is like is almost like the perfect camera because it gives you just so many different flexibilities. And it has a lot of the pro features like Pro XLRs. Even though they're XLR minis, they're still professional XLR. You just need a little adapter, which doesn't cost that much. You got built-in NDs. Y'all know the specs. I don't need to go over the specs. But I think the C70, that's going to be one of their biggest sellers coming near the end of the year when it's released next month. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens with the C90. Now, again, this is supposed to be coming out. That's supposed to be coming out next year. But while the cameras are definitely the interesting parts of it, to me, this is the most exciting. If you are someone, especially if you're someone who is committed to the RF lineup, this is the most exciting news. And this is the one I didn't get to. That is that Canon has a whole roadmap of lenses, like a whole slew of lenses, and excuse the ads, but as you can see, we got a lot coming in. Quite a few of them are quite exciting as well. For those of you that are doing those more safari shoots, I mean the 400, 500, 600, 800, but a 600 f4, a 500 f4, a 400 2.8, an 800 5.6, a 1200 f8, like they are coming on those super telephoto ends. They are really coming full swinging. So, but those things got to be massive. I'm really curious to see the size of those things and the cost. Because if I remember correctly, the 600 F4, the EF version equivalent is like $13,000. So I'm interested to see that. The one that's really interested in me, and I know I don't think Gaston Shutters is in the chat, but I know my man Gaston. He definitely is going to love this little guy, the 10-24, especially when it talks about something like the C70, where you got that wide focal length. This is going to be, when you got that Super 35 sensor on the RF mount, this is going to be a really nice little feature to have. A 14-35 f4, I think that's going to be a cool, affordable option. And it's an L, and these are L glass. But they got a couple more, a 24 f1.8 STM, a 35 millimeter f1.2. I know a lot of people have been waiting for that one. The 100 millimeter 2.8 L. I love the EF version of this, so I'm really excited to see what that 135 millimeter f1.4, and then they got the 24 millimeter 3.5. It's an L glass, so it's really interested. TSR. What is TSR? Does anybody, if you know what TSR is, please leave that in the chat. I would love to hear, because I honestly do not know what that means. And then a TSR 14 millimeter f4. So this is the thing that's really exciting me. Like, they are, and this sort of solidifies why I think going, if you're looking at Canon, especially if you're trying to look at more future investments, especially if you're interested in future investments with Canon, the RF line is definitely the way to go, because it, based on what I see and also what people that I know have been telling me, Canon is really looking to move all of their cameras and all their production efforts to the RF lineup and the RF ecosystem, even including their cinema cameras. So we'll see how that goes. Now, does that mean that all of a sudden your EF glass is going to be useless? No, they're still great glass. It's just, I think they're really just committing, because they're seeing, I mean, Canon's a lens manufacturer first and foremost, so going this mirrorless route and seeing the results that they're getting, and also, a lot, but look, even with all the critical feedback of what people have been saying about the R5 and the R6 launch, and even the R launch and the RP, the one thing that has been very, very praised has been their lenses. So I look forward to seeing these and trying to sort of figure out how I'm going to sort of build an RF lens lineup as well. Trevor, those can't possibly be redesigns. They have to be reworks. That's insane, the number. Yeah, they can't be. I don't honestly think they're redesigns. Well, no, I don't think they're reworks. I do think they are redesigns, because even the lenses that they sort of have been mirroring from their EF lines are shown to be have noticeable better effects, like that 85 millimeter 1.8 compared to their old 85 millimeter f2. It shows there's a lot of different redesigns, and they're not just like completely, putting in. They're not just like, hey, let's just take the rehousing. They're not just rehousing it. They are like building all these up from the bottom up. So, but it is interesting to see that they got this many lenses in the lineup, and supposedly these are all coming next year. Okay, they're tilt shift. Okay, all right. So yeah, I mean, and I don't know if you guys saw, but there's even a patent for a stereoscopic lens as well, like that. I think it's like would be used for like 3D. So Canon is like going full swings in every single avenue of film, video, and photography, and developing lenses to capture every avenue. So, as interesting of a year it was for this year for Canon, 2021 definitely looks like it's going to be a better, more interesting year for Canon.